Welcome back to Midlife Mayhem, the podcast all about midlife and the beautiful chaos it brings. I'm Kim Branham, RN BSN, and co-owner of Thin Space Wellness. And this is my very sweet husband, Stephen Branham, who is our PA and medical supervisor for Thin Space Wellness and co-owner as well.
Hey,
Thanks for joining me on a second podcast.
thanks for waking me up.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime. So it is still the wee hours of the morning in Estes Park, Colorado, and this is a part 2 to our 2-part series we started last week on the first episode was about Stephen's medical background, and we touched on how he landed in the space we're in now, which is wellness, having our own wellness practice in 2 states. And we started touching on like how that came to fruition, but I really wanted to save that for a second episode so we didn't bore you guys with a 1-hour long podcast. So to really dig into what Thin Space Wellness is, I think it really roots in with the traditional Celtic meaning of what thin spaces are, which is where we got the name from. So thin space and thin spaces, according to Celtic tradition, is where heaven and earth's lines are blurred. And you can't tell the difference between where earth stops and heaven begins. So it's a place where it's almost like this. I think of it as like a protective bubble of being close to God. So we came up with that term. A friend of ours told us about it, and then we started researching it online. You remember the article we found about it? I think your dad sent us that article, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were brainstorming with Stephen's dad, and he sent us this article about thin spaces. Should I tell that story now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this gentleman's story really, really spoke to me, and I may tear up. I've got tissues, got my Kleenex box right here. Okay. So this gentleman's story, the gist of it is that his wife was 7.5 months pregnant, I believe, and went into labor way too early and had some complications. So she was in the hospital and she had the baby, but she was actively dying. So there I go. This gentleman would go to the hospital to visit his wife, and she was in one building, and then there was a breezeway that connected to the children's hospital where his newborn son was. So he found himself at the hospital going back and forth between these 2 buildings. And that breezeway became a place where every time he would leave his wife to go visit his son, he would stop, grab their handrail, and pray. And then he would go see his son, do the same thing, coming back to see his wife. But he always in that breezeway stopped and would just like grasp onto the rail and pray. And he described that time of his life as being a thin space for him, where it was a place of grounding, going through one of the hardest things he'd probably ever been through. So that really spoke to me because I just started processing and thinking through how many thin spaces I've experienced myself and how many thin spaces I hear about from other people all the time and just didn't realize what they were, But to really put a label on it just made so much sense to me. And so we were talking last episode about when we started Thin Space Wellness, like formalized what we were doing to help clients and patients. And that was around the time shortly after COVID. And a lot of that has to do with Estes Park, Colorado, and spending a lot of time with Stephen's mom, and what produced a ton of thin space moments for, I think, both of us with your mom. His mom's name is Dawn. We call her Nana. And when Stephen brought me out to Colorado for the very first time and I met them, I've never felt so welcomed by 2 humans, her and her husband, John. And they are still 2 of my very favorite people that I've ever known in my life. And I miss them both very, very much. Good grief. I get through a whole box of tissues. But we were out here with Nana. She had pancreatic cancer, and in being with her, we were either in Colorado with her, helping her, or she was in North Carolina with us. And so we were always together, trying to help her through this unimaginable disease. If you've known anybody or have experienced pancreatic cancer, it is just devastating. Um, but we had a lot of time together, and we had a lot of time with Dawn, and um, we just one day were talking about the company and decided to name it Thin Space Wellness for that reason. It just Estes Park feels like a thin space for us where you can't be here and not feel God. You can't drive around and see these miraculous animals and go through the Rocky Mountain National Park, and it's just the thin space of that the high altitude and God's beauty, and it's like heaven on earth. It's like a little snow globe of just being in heaven. But so that's kind of the gist of what thin spaces are. And how about you talk a little bit about that start of the company and what your experience was, maybe some of your thin space experience with your mom?
Yeah. Well, it is a brutal disease. And she's a warrior. She was 100% a warrior.
Hmm.
I think when you're, God, I'm gonna get teary. Um, Experiencing that level of disease, and especially with somebody that was previously healthy, completely healthy, you just you have to navigate through that. Just the transition of the role that you have in someone's life. Um, and there was just so many bumpy roads, and then you think she's getting better, and then she wouldn't, and getting her on airplanes and moving her around, and just trying to, you know, anybody could be in this situation. It's not a medical provider situation, although I think that helped. But
Mm.
um, a lot of decisions to be made, and I don't know. I think those experiences just really develop you as a person. Um, because a lot of people will just run the other direction instead of embracing it and just saying, okay, I can do my best to help the situation, even though it's probably not going to end the way you want it to. So,
Right.
but I agree. I mean, I think, she introduced us, even though I grew up an hour away from here. The more time we spent here with her and John, the more we just started to, you learn to appreciate things differently. And I think that's a big part of the thin space mantra is you got to stop and take a breath and take it in, because you can breeze right by
Yep.
very easily
Yeah, I
instead of
agree.
just, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I I think the thing with Steven's mom and John was that from like we had been dating 3 months when you brought me out here to meet her, and we both had 4-year-old little boys, and it was just a magical trip. I had never been out west, and I remember being in tears from the airport all the way here. It's an hour and a half drive from Denver to here, and just being in tears at the beauty. Like every corner you turn, there's different terrain, and it's just like to think about God's creation being so unique every time you turn around.
Mhm.
Um, and but spending time with Dawn and John, they became our best friends. I mean, he's always had a close relationship with his mom, but I think that when we were all together, it was just that was just the way it was. Like we traveled together. If we weren't here, they were there in North Carolina, and we chose each other. We chose to be with each other. There was always effort on both sides, and when we were here, we were planning our next trip back. We were planning when they were
Mhm.
going to come see us, and I love that relationship with them, and I learned so much from them about slowing down and about appreciating the thin space moments. Um, and I can think of so many thin space moments that we had with both of them. Starting with John. John was diagnosed with lung cancer,
Mhm.
and he was a trooper, and he still would travel. We went on a cruise to Alaska, 2 weeks before he passed away.
Mhm.
Um, but for them to allow us to spend not just time with them, but time in their most
Difficult
difficult
moment.
moments, and to allow us to be part of it was the biggest honor. And I remember when I decided to go back to nursing school, it was when I wanted to be a labor and delivery nurse in the beginning. I love babies. I'm obsessed with babies, if y'all don't know that about me. when I'm around babies, if we're out in public, Mo's like, "Mom, walk away."
You may not get your baby
Yeah, you
back.
might not get your baby back. But part of a big part of why I wanted to become a nurse was my mom. I'd always kind of had that ingrained in me that I thought one day I would become a nurse. I had my first son, and that experience really pushed me towards that. But one of the biggest experiences I had that really sent me over the edge, and I don't know if we've even talked about this, we may have. Um, my ex-husband's dad was seemingly healthy, and they found a spot on his lung and went in to do a biopsy. And I remember we went, like it was nothing. We were just going to the doctor, and they went in and did the biopsy and ended up cutting him open and feeling around the back of his lung, and it was covered in tumors. So they couldn't do anything. They just sewed him back up, and he died about a week later in the ICU. I remember that being one of my thin space moments, being with him in the hospital. We would take turns going down. He lived in Myrtle Beach, and I was down there by myself and just didn't know what to do. And the family was calling me, asking me questions. I had no idea. I had no
Mm,
idea. Um, and I'd never wanted to feel that helpless again with moving forward, with knowing that we had aging parents. And I wanted to be the one that could help and the one that could step in and have knowledge to, the medical knowledge to help people understand what was happening with their family members or with themselves. Um, but that definitely, I remember that moment just being in the ICU with him and just feeling like just nothing else mattered. Like we were just in that bubble and just being with him, and he was awake, but he was intubated, so he couldn't talk, but talking with him
mhm.
and whew, but talking about the in space moments, to really like dig into some that we've had. And I really, I know I would, I know you probably would. I would love to hear your thin space stories. This one of the
Mhm.
reasons we started the podcast was this conversation. Exactly. It was talking about thin spaces and these experiences like the gentleman had on that breezeway. And so, going back to your mom, like, can you think of a thin space moment that really stands out to you that you've had, or any thin space moment in your life where you felt that, just that merge of heaven and earth?
Well, I know we feel it here every day, but with my mom, we were here with her a lot. And I just think you said it best. Like when you just slow down, and you're not running the other direction, you're wanting to be a part of, even though it's not a happy time, you're going into that rather than avoiding it, and I think that's where I mentioned earlier. I mean, if you're not aware or not involved, you're not going to get those moments. You're going to hear about
Yeah.
them. So I think a big part of just life in general is embracing things and not just flying by them.
Well, and can I add to that? And even more so than just embracing things, I think it's being willing to listen to God's nudges.
Hmm.
Um, because the human reaction is to run away from hard things. I mean, that's like human nature. Um,
Right.
but to be able to lean into things like that in situations and really be involved and really be part of it it does. I think it takes a lot of faith and a lot of listening to what God's telling us to do. And I remember praying about that a lot. Like, what do we do? What do we do? Does she get care here? Does she get care in North Carolina? Like, how do we manage our jobs, our kids, our families? Like, a lot of you listeners probably know, that sandwich generation where you have the young kids and you've got aging parents and you're just trying to like survive, you know,
Hmm.
that was, I wouldn't trade that time for anything, but I remember that time was just so much. It was so much. And it was an
Hmm.
honor. It was an absolute honor, but it was hard on our kids. It was hard on our family. It was hard on your mom. Ooh, but yeah, there's, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, just yeah. I mean, it brings back all those memories of multiple chemo treatments a week, and she wasn't driving, so we were taking her, and then procedure after procedure after procedure, and then the recovery, and not have her. She wouldn't come out of the room for days. Sometimes
Yeah,
I would
that
just
woman.
check on her.
I wish if you knew Dawn, you know this about her, but she was one of the most determined. What did her Bible study group call her? Determined Dawn?
Dairy.
Daring Dawn? It was Daring Dawn.
Mhm.
but she was one of the most determined and lovingly stubborn women
Yeah.
I think I've ever known. She was so strong,
Mm.
and just so wise. Like, I think she just really lived that quiet life, just a slow, quiet life to where she perceived things differently than I ever had before. And I'm starting to appreciate that more and more the older I get.
Mm.
Um, because she knew the thin space moments for sure. But one of the thin space moments, a specific one that I can think of, was the night that she passed away.
Mm. Wow. Yeah.
And so Dawn was given this horrible diagnosis, and she should not have lasted longer than 6 months at the most. And she lived 15 months
Yep.
past her diagnosis because of her strength and stubbornness. She was
Yeah.
not ready to go. But by the end, we were in North Carolina, and she wanted to get home to Colorado because she had a chemo treatment scheduled. So we celebrated Christmas in North Carolina, and she couldn't eat. She was sick as a dog. She was probably 80 pounds.
When she had a procedure the day before,
Yeah, she ended up having to have an emergency procedure the day before. And
she said, "No more,
yeah,
no more,
yeah,
no more treatments, no more procedures. I'm not doing that
except
again."
chemo. She wanted to do the
Yeah.
chemo, but yeah, she was done with the procedures. But she had me book a flight for her um, the day after her procedure to come back to Colorado to have chemo. And in my brain, my controlling nursing brain, I was like, no, you're not doing that. But
Mm.
you don't tell Dawn no.
No.
And it's what she wanted to do. And we could not go because
She wouldn't let us.
she wouldn't let us go. Steven tried to go with her, but I couldn't go because I had to work. I was still working at the school at the time. And I'd taken a lot of days off for obvious reasons, but she wouldn't let Steven go with her. And so the compromise was that if she went, that she would allow her neighbors to pick her up at the airport instead of her driving herself from Denver to Estes Park. So she finally like conceded. She was not happy about it, but she was like, fine. So our family took her to the airport, and that felt like a thin space moment to me, watching her walk away from the car by herself. And our kids were standing on the curbside at the airport watching her walk away, literally skin and bones.
Yeah.
And but here's the funny moment I remember is that she got out of the car, and some guy came over with a wheelchair and was like, "Ma'am, would you like some assistance?" And she was like, "Get that away from me. I don't need that." And he looked at me and I
Uh,
went, "Talk to her."
yeah.
And I appreciate that so much about her because she went with dignity. And we, that night, knew something was going on because I had her American Airlines number on my app. Like, her flight would notify me when things changed. And it came up on a notification and said that she had landed, but that she requested assistance.
Yeah.
And as soon as I read that, I knew that she was not doing well. And Stephen got on a plane an hour later. Like, we booked a Frontier flight an hour later, and he got on a plane and flew out there, got an Uber to Estes Park, and made it here. And she passed away 30 minutes later.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And 100% like thinking about being in that moment, it's like nothing else exists. Like, time stands still. There's that thin space bubble.
Yep.
And for you, like, your experience with that, is that how you felt about that? Like, when you got here and just like,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, it was crazy that I got on that plane because I think, we were just all not knowing what to do. And then you do what you do, which is I'm thankful for. And I didn't know how to make a decision, because I knew she was going to kick my butt if I just showed up and she was fine. What are you doing here is what she would have said.
yep.
Because she wanted to be independent. But yeah, that chain of events that happened we were all in tears, all of us, when she walked into the airport. I wouldn't let her bring luggage because she was dealing with a broken humerus
Mm-hmm.
and had just gotten out of a sling because she fell getting her mail on the ice here. And we did her care there for that. And then she wanted to come home. So that was not an easy discussion with her. But yeah, from watching her actually eat one bite of cold pizza
Mm.
and then get in the car to go to the airport. And I think she knew she needed some fuel.
That's all she'd eaten in days.
Yeah. Yep. And then, so I'm on a plane. The fact that I made it through security and got on that plane was a miracle in itself. and then made it here. The neighbors were like, should we take her to the ER? And I knew she would kill me.
Yeah.
So I just said, I'm on my way. And it couldn't have gone smoother to get here. And I got here to the wonderful neighbors that we have, and lots of hugs. And then it was just her and I, and she was upside down in the bed facing the wrong way, but they had gotten her into bed, and she was just sleeping deeply, just like sleeping. It wasn't like, oh, I kept thinking she's going to wake up and ask me what the heck I'm doing here. So I think I took a break from laying next to her and just left her room and called you. And then when I walked back in, I was like, seriously, are you really not breathing? Like, wow, this is it.
Yeah. And when you think about those moments, I can so clearly see God driving my body, because that was not, I mean, there's so many moments in that. Like when I got that notification on my phone, I immediately picked up my phone and booked a flight. We
Mm-hmm.
were in our pajamas, like getting ready to go to
Yeah.
bed. And that I feel like it was an outer body experience. It's like God takes over in those moments
Yeah.
and helps you to do what maybe you would not be able to do on your own.
Right.
Like you
I
being here.
I was a puppet. You just tell me where to go.
Yeah. But Dawn's neighbors, oh my gosh. Like I don't know that they will ever know how much we appreciate them and what they did for Dawn for years. I mean, it's not like it was just then, but like when she was here and we had to be in North Carolina and she had TPN through a central port, and they don't have home health in Estes Park right now. There's no hospice.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll change, and that's part of a passion of ours, is to try to help develop that down the road. But her neighbors would come over and help her get her TPN set up, which is something that a skilled nurse needs to be doing. But she bonded with it. They came twice a day to help her get it on at night and help her get it off in the morning. And that's a big commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And then the night that she passed away, our neighbors up the road that were helping, that went and picked her up to the airport, got her in the bed. The other neighbors across the street, who were two of my favorite people, came over and helped to get her in the bed and get her taken care of. They had to get her cleaned up because they were
GI, a lot of GI issues.
Yeah, a lot of GI issues. And
well, don't forget, even though her neighbors came to the airport, she still tried to get in the car and drive.
Oh yeah,
it had not one, two flat tires.
Oh, do you know why she had to?
Because
so here's God intervening in all this. She was going to try to drive her car anyway and have her neighbor follow her, and got in and had two flat tires because while she was in North Carolina, I thought I'd be a sweet daughter-in-law and had her car detailed.
Well,
and so they took it out of the parking spot, and at some point it got nails in the tires, so she couldn't drive the car back to Estes Park. So when the neighbors were there, they somehow got the tires inflated. One of his wife drove Dawn, if I'm remembering correctly. She drove Dawn, and he drove Dawn's car behind them so we could get the car back to Estes Park. But she
slept the entire way.
Yeah, she slept the entire way back. When they got home,
they had to carry her out.
They got her with the other neighbor's help into her bed, and she had these cats, and she told them, she said, "Get the cats out of here and close my door."
That would be Nana.
Oh my gosh. But she was just so, as soon as she got home, the neighbor said that she just said, "Thank God."
Yeah.
I can't imagine her day between the Charlotte International Airport construction, Denver Airport construction, and she navigated all of that by herself. Got on a bus to go to the parking lot, the long-term parking lot, to get on her car and go home.
I didn't know how to get around the Charlotte airport. It was a mess.
Yeah. It was an absolute mess. But so that's definitely one of the many thin space moments with Nana that I don't think I'll ever be the same from. I mean, that experience, again, her allowing us to be part of that journey with her, was just one of the biggest honors.
Do you remember she would always get the sickest right when the holidays would be here and there was no offices open?
Yep.
And she refused to go to the ER. Yep. So we would have to figure out how to backdoor her to get seen by somebody.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. The phone calls, and she's sick. We got to get her somewhere.
But the flights back and forth, the doctors, how to get her in quickly because, yeah,
Doctors in 2 states.
people ask all the time how you and I live the lives that we live right now, like going between the two states. This is a breeze. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about like that time in our lives when we were trying to juggle children in North Carolina in school, getting us and her back and forth. We would divide and conquer. Chemo treatments. Okay, now she needs this emergency stent. Like
Oh my gosh.
that was
And then she went for the Hail Mary on that
the Whipple.
Whipple
Yep.
surgery, 8 hours, and it didn't work.
Yep. And she was septic.
Oh my gosh,
And
she coded. She coded, and they forgot to call me. I was in the hotel across the street from the hospital down in Anschutz.
mm-hmm.
And I came in, and they're like, "She's in the ICU now. We had to code her last night." And I'm like, "What?
Nobody called you.
Why didn't you call me?"
And the other, another, not the other, another Nana story of her strength and determination. She was so ready to be out of that hospital when she was
Oh my
septic.
gosh.
She started calling all of her friends' husbands to come pick her up and rescue her from the hospital. And they called Steven and he was like, absolutely not. You're not going to get my mom. She's not released. Like, no.
Well, they had moved her out of the room with the view into like some dungeon in the
Oh, yeah.
basement.
I'm sure she felt like she was in like a padded room.
Yeah.
But she
She's,
fought through it. And that woman's strength got her through. And she lived. That was in July. And then she passed away in January.
yep.
Yep.
January 9th.
Wow. So,
Do you remember when we left early and decided to drive towards Netherland, and it was a snowstorm blowing that Jeep all over the road, that big heavy Jeep, and you pulled over in the middle of the road, or asked me to pull over in the middle of the Peak to Peak Highway?
oh, yeah.
Is that a thin space?
That's a thin space moment. Yeah, that was, well, you tell that story.
Well, they were going to leave later with the kids. I think we were going to Eldora.
This was like before we were married. This was a long time ago.
So just you and I, blizzard, driving the Peak to Peak, trying to keep both hands on the wheel, not get blown off the road. I think we were near the chapel, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're like, pull over, just pull over the car. And I'm like, what's wrong? What happened? You jump out and you're like twirling around in the middle of the road in the snow.
That's when I used to be fun.
And then we were planning our wedding. I think we were looking at doing our wedding in Asheville, right? Mm-hmm. Asheville, North Carolina, which is a really cool spot. But anyway, yeah, you just said, I wish we could get married here. It's the most beautiful.
Right there, I meant it. Right there on the road. Like, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And, yeah, continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, well, yeah, I think I shocked you when I'm like, let's just do it. We're here for 12 days.
We had our kids with us.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've heard my other podcast, not being my first marriage, family reception was a little interesting to navigate. Had its moments. And so we were with Dawn and John, and they were our best friends. And
Mm-hmm.
we had our kids here. And so we went, we were at Black Hawk that night after
That's
skiing.
right. Yeah.
And guess what? At 3 a.m, Stephen was awake and started researching wedding event planners, like elopement specialists in Estes Park, Colorado. And the first one he called, he told her what we wanted to do. And she was like, I'll be your fairy godmother.
She picked up at like 5 a.m.
Yeah. She was amazing. And that does feel like a thin space time period. Like it was like a 3-day period between when we made that decision to getting married. And there was not one moment of stress. Seriously, not one. I did not feel stressed one time. They only have one, or at the time had one wedding place in town, one wedding shop. And there was only one dress that fit me, and it was 50% off. And then tell them what happened at the Stanley.
Well, we had lunch there, and then I think you mentioned we should see if we could talk to the coordinator, and we found her, and she wanted to give us this grand tour, which was really cool.
Do you remember their minimum?
$15,000 minimum for a wedding, and it was going into January, New Year's, and she's like, well, what's your budget? And we had already looked at getting a park pass and getting married up in the national park, which was $150 permit. I said, well, right now it's $150. But anyway, I didn't know what to tell her for a number. It's like, what do you do for a small wedding? 15 grand's probably a little too much. But anyway, we left. She had our contact. She said she talked to her manager and just see where they could come down to price wise and if they had the availability, which when she called back, she's like, listen, we're dead. After New Year's, this place is a ghost. They used to close the Stanley every year,
Mhm.
even I think before New Year's, or maybe right around there. So she's like, listen, we're going to do it for your $150. I
Yeah.
was like, you don't have to do that.
And yeah, so they did the wedding for $150. And then we had already reserved a room to stay there the night of our wedding, regardless of where we got married. And it was like $359 or something for the room. She was like, and your room's going to be $99 because you're getting married here. So it's discounted.
And we had the private room for dinner.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But it just felt like it wasn't us. It was like this,
Mm-hmm.
it was God. I mean, just like guiding all of it. And it just was amazing. So
And
that was a,
and you said yes.
I did I?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good. Yeah. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. We
13
got,
years this January.
mm-hmm.
Wow.
We got some good pictures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a great time. Great time.
We went up in the park, remember? And
Went
got the
sledding.
kids on
Yep.
sleds and we were in tuxedos on sleds
And
and
wedding
wedding
dresses.
dresses.
Yeah. So thin space moments. I have two that I want to mention. One, I think I've already mentioned in a podcast, and I might not have called it a thin space moment, but it 100% was. And it's when my mom was killed. Um, that moment when she was hit by the other driver and my little brother and I were in the car, the fact that I never heard anything, the fact that like that police officer came, there was a teacher that came to talk to us to keep us occupied. I had no idea what was going on, except that my mom was helping a guy that had been in a wreck. That whole situation just feels like I was just cloaked in God, just wrapped in the Holy Spirit that protected me and my little brother from knowing what was going on. Wowzer. I mean, that was looking back on that,
Yeah.
that was a big one. And then one of my other thin space moments that I'm gonna get choked up about, but so when my dad was sick, my dad wasn't feeling well for a very long time. He was on high dose steroids for something that he didn't have. They didn't even have. They were waiting on a biopsy result, so they started him on these high dose steroids. What was it called that they thought he had?
Let me think on that for a second. Keep going.
Okay, yeah, you're the only one that could remember the name of it. Anyway, they thought he had this rare thing. So he would tell me all the time. I talked to my dad every day, and he's like, "Kim, these pills are going to kill me. These pills are going to kill me." And I'm like, "Well, let's get this figured out." And so the doctor finally started weaning him off the prednisone because you have to wean off. And
Polyrheumatic
there you go.
arthralgia. So anyway,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, PMR.
Just you're
No, PMA. Anyway,
you're just sore. Or
yeah,
it's almost like having fibromyalgia.
yeah, like chronic pain and joint
Mm.
issues. And anyway, so
I'm going to think of it in a minute. Sorry.
they weaned him off the prednisone and he wasn't doing well. And I remember talking to him on the phone one day, and we missed for some reason we couldn't talk. He had a call. I think he had a Zoom meeting because he did some things on some boards. And so he was on a Zoom meeting and he ended up not calling me back like he said he would. And I talked to him the next day and he was like, Kim, I fell asleep on my Zoom call. He was like, something's going on. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And then, so I was talking to him and he never really got to feeling better. But then when I talked to him one day and I said, well, how are you guys? And he said that they had gone, he was giving a speech. He's a retired brigadier general in the National Guard. He gave speeches quite often, but he was going to give a speech. And when he was walking up the stairs, he collapsed and turned gray. And I immediately think his heart because it's cardiac.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a heart history, but he was fine. They took him upstairs anyway, which I can't believe. And he went and gave his speech, but during the speech, he wasn't making sense and he was calling people by the wrong names. And so my stepmom and dad were telling me about this over the phone, and I was like, you need to take him to the ER right now. Like right now, you need to take him
I
to the
remember
ER.
that.
And he's like, no, no, no. If I feel this bad tomorrow, I'll go. And I was like, if you're saying that to me, you need to go to the ER. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
Bonnie, take him to the ER. I'm on my way down to Wilmington. So I drove down and met him at the hospital. But that time was just so crazy, but it transitioned. He had pneumococcal pneumonia just because his immune system was so suppressed
Mm.
from the corticosteroids for so long. So the doctor had told us exactly what was going to happen, exactly what the course of that looked like. Like his lungs would eventually white out. He'd have to be intubated. He'd go into the ICU, and the hope is that they would be able to get him the medication he needed quick enough so that he would heal and come out of it. Well, all of that happened, and
Quickly.
it happened quickly. It was yeah, and he didn't come out of it. So he was intubated. My sister and I went down to Wilmington together. She lives in Charlotte too. And we were at the hospital visiting him, and we were in his room. He was on propofol, so he was out, but we were making posters of all of our family pictures and stuff to put up all over the walls. So as he started to wake up, that he would, remember and be surrounded by us. And my stepmom called and wanted me to go to lunch, or both of us to go to lunch with her and my little brother, who my little brother's not spoken to me in many, many years. I don't know why. May have mentioned that before on the podcast. But that was something that was always very important to my dad and to my stepmom. They wanted us to just be okay with each other. And I had tried for years to make things okay, not knowing what was wrong and couldn't. So, right or wrong, in the ICU, I told my stepmom, I don't want to go to lunch. I came here to Wilmington to have one day to spend with my dad. I'd like the time alone with my dad. And I was cussed out and screamed at, and which made my decision even better to stay with my dad. So I got a solid like hour and a half, 2 hours with just my dad, and I sang to him and him, held his hand. That in itself was a thin space moment for me. Um, I didn't get a lot of alone time with my dad because there were always other things, you know. So that was really a precious moment for me. So when they got back from lunch, they came in, and my stepmom was still very clearly not happy with me. So I left my sister there. I'd driven down to Wilmington, and I said I'll be back, and I drove to the cemetery where my mom was buried. So I didn't mean for the story to be so long, sorry. um, but I went. My mom's grave is right, like what, a football field from the mausoleum where Bonnie, my stepmom, and my dad were going to be placed. And I'd never seen the mausoleum, so I walked around to the mausoleum and saw, the mausoleums, they normally have people's names on them before they pass away. So I saw my dad's name. And the cemetery down in Oleander Memorial Gardens down in Wilmington is one of the most beautiful places. They've got the huge oak trees with the Spanish moss, and the breeze was just, it was the perfect temperature, and the breeze was beautiful, and somebody had hung wind chimes. And I just prayed, and I prayed to my mom, and I just said, Mom, if this is my dad's time, just please welcome him to heaven with open arms. And I'm happy for you two to be together again. I don't want him to go, but it's like I had this peace over me, and it's so hard to describe, but it was the most peaceful, just acceptance. Like I knew my dad was not going to make it. And I think I knew that for a while. Um, but that's one of my favorite thin space moments personally, just with being able to come to peace that like he was joining my mom. And anyway, just knowing what those thin space moments are, I feel like makes me look back and appreciate so many more moments in my life and see them for what they were.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so many people out there I know have thin space moments, and we want to hear them. So please email me. It's kim@thinspacewellness.com. And email us because we'd love to hear about it. And I will be doing some more interviews with some patients, some friends, some people that reach out to us, hearing about these moments, because I think they're important to really be able to pinpoint and help other people pinpoint their own thin space moments because they're there.
Well, that develop you as a person.
Yeah.
You know, you get depth from those experiences, especially if you stop and recognize them like you have.
Yeah.
Even today. Because I think you've grown.
Mm. I think we all stay the same.
What movie is that?
It's a quote. Guess that movie. I think we all stay the same. We can't tell them.
President? Oh,
We're
okay.
gonna make them come back and
That's right.
find out. We'll tell you next episode what the movie is. Oh, but I appreciate so much you all being here with me. It's producing some thin space moments in itself, like being able to share the story about my mom. What was that, episode 3 or something? That just talking about that was so cathartic. Is that the right word for
Mm-hmm.
that? I mean, it just was so healing to be able to share that story. And I've heard from so many other people who have had trauma in their lives, heartbreak. It, it's important to know that you're not alone. And again, I think a lot of those thin space moments are God led, and you have a choice to either lean into what God's nudging you to do or to choose your own path. And not that any of it's wrong, but I think you miss out on those thin space moments, which are priceless and life changing.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that.
Yeah.
So that's all I got on that today. That's all I have to say about that. Let's do movie quotes all day. Is that a good impression?
Yeah.
Name that movie. But thank you for joining us, honey. Thank you for being on here with me. It means the world. Because you and I doing this together, the company together, experiencing life together in these thin space moments is just, I'm so grateful.
I'm honored.
Well, thank you.
Your eye patches are still on, even with the tears.
I know these are good things. Good eye patches. I forgot to write on them though. I should have written on them. But please join us again. We will be back for one more episode to get, well, probably plenty more episodes over the years, but next week we're going to have one more episode together all about adult relationships. And I've talked about this before on the podcast a little bit. I've touched on it, but we have kind of a different take that we want to discuss for next week. Just about how your time is spent, because time is precious. Clearly, especially after this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
time is precious. So how are you spending it? So we will check in with you next week and have that great topic. You guys take care. Please do reach out. We'd love to hear your thin space stories. Please do follow us on YouTube. It's Kim Branham RN is my username on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. And Stephen actually has a page called The Untamed View, which just hit 100,000 followers yesterday.
Yippee.
Cheers to you. We started the page to share all of the amazing things that we see in Estes Park with everybody in North Carolina that we know, because people would ask us for pictures and we're like, oh, we'll just start a page. And he's created this community of like wildlife loving, Estes Park loving people online. It's amazing, from all over the world. I'm really proud of you.
Oh, it's been so much fun.
Yeah. So if you like wildlife and you like thin spaces and you like Estes Park, check it out. It's The Untamed View on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube.
Thanks.
Any other plugs I can give for you?
No, that was good.
Okay, good. All right, you guys have a great day. Thank you again so much for listening, and we look forward to joining up with you next week on another fun topic. Okay, have a great day.
Bye.